What makes a car truly unforgettable? Is it the groundbreaking designs or those quirky, ingenious features that leave a lasting impression, even decades after they've disappeared? Cars have always been a platform for innovation, combining practicality with bold statements of style and creativity. Take T-tops, for instance, those distinctive roof panels that brought the best of both worlds. The open-air freedom of convertibles and the structural rigidity of hardtops. Or consider the flamboyant, jet-inspired tail fins of the 1950s, which gave automobiles a futuristic flair that turned heads on every street corner. These features were more than functional. They embodied the spirit of their eras. Yet, as automakers shifted priorities, many of these once iconic innovations faded into obscurity. At Retro Rides Garage, we believe that it's these unique and memorable features that truly make a car unforgettable. So if you've ever found yourself captivated by these iconic touches, join us as we take a nostalgic journey through 25 unforgettable car features that disappeared far too soon. If you haven't already, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more automotive history, fun facts, and deep dives into the most iconic rides ever built. We begin our journey in the early 1900s, a time when the challenges of driving extended far beyond navigating unpaved roads or dealing with unreliable engines. Simply starting a car was a demanding, physical ordeal. Drivers relied on manual crank starters, heavy metal handles inserted into the front of the engine, which needed to be turned vigorously by hand to ignite the engine. This task was not only strenuous, but fraught with danger. A poorly timed crank or engine misfire could cause the crank to kick back violently, often leading to painful injuries, including broken bones. Despite the risks, this method remained the standard until 1912, when Cadillac introduced the electric starter, a groundbreaking innovation that transformed car ownership. With this new technology, starting a car became as simple as pressing a button, a convenience that revolutionized the industry and rendered the manual crank starter obsolete by the 1920s. Today, the once essential crank starter is a relic of a bygone era, a testament to the physical demands early drivers endured just to get their cars moving. The bench seat is another hallmark of automotive history that evokes fond memories of simpler, more communal times. Spanning the entire width of the front row, bench seats allowed 3 passengers to sit side by side, fostering intimacy and a sense of togetherness. From the early 1900s to the 1980s, they were a staple in passenger cars, reflecting an era where practicality and social connection were valued. However, as automotive design evolved, so did the priorities of car makers and consumers. Bucket seats, with their sporty aesthetic, individualized comfort, and superior lateral support, gradually replaced bench seats. Their design also better accommodated emerging safety features like seat belts and airbags. By the late 1980s, bench seats had largely disappeared from passenger cars, surviving only in trucks and larger vehicles. Today, they stand as a nostalgic reminder of a time when automotive interiors were designed to bring people closer, both literally and figuratively. Turning to exterior design, few features encapsulated the spirit of 20th century automotive innovation and style quite like pop-up headlights. Introduced in the 1960s and popularized through the 1980s, these concealed headlights contributed to a car's sleek, aerodynamic appearance during the day and added a dramatic flair at night when they rose gracefully at the flick of a switch. Pop-up headlights became synonymous with iconic sports cars, lending a sense of theater and sophistication to the driving experience. However, their appeal came with drawbacks. The intricate mechanisms required to operate the lights were prone to mechanical failure. And as pedestrian safety regulations became more stringent, concerns arose about the potential hazards posed by their sharp edges. By the early 2000s, fixed headlights with streamlined designs became the industry standard, effectively ending the era of pop-up headlights. While their absence marks the progression of technology and safety, their legacy endures in the hearts of enthusiasts who remember them as a whimsical and stylish hallmark of automotive history. Another technological marvel of the early automotive age was the carburetor, which reigned as the beating heart of car engines for much of the 20th century. From the 1900s to the 1980s, carburetors performed the critical task of mixing air and fuel in precise proportions for combustion. They were prized for their mechanical simplicity, ease of maintenance, and adaptability to different engine designs. However, as environmental awareness grew and government regulations tightened, the carburetor's inherent inefficiencies became apparent. It struggled to meet the demands for reduced emissions and improved fuel efficiency. By the 1980s, electronic fuel injection systems began replacing carburetors, offering precise computer-controlled fuel delivery, better performance, and significantly lower emissions. By the 1990s, carburetors had disappeared from modern vehicles, relegated to the history books. For automotive enthusiasts, however, carburetors remain a symbol of ingenious engineering, remembered fondly for their straightforward design and mechanical artistry. Comfort in early cars was often an afterthought, and before the advent of air conditioning, drivers turned to vent windows for relief. These small triangular panes located near the front windows became standard features in cars from the 1930s to the 1970s. Vent windows were more than just a convenience. On sweltering days, they offered a cooling breeze without the turbulence or noise caused by fully rolling down the windows. They allowed passengers to control airflow with a simple flick of the latch, providing a natural and effective solution to combat heat. However, as air conditioning technology became widespread and more affordable during the 1970s, vent windows began to fall out of favor. Automakers prioritized sleek aerodynamic designs that eliminated extraneous components, and by the late 1970s, vent windows were no longer a standard feature. For those who experienced their practicality, vent windows evoke a nostalgic longing for a time when keeping cool meant working harmoniously with nature rather than relying on technology. Through these features, manual crank starters, carburetors, vent windows, bench seats, and pop-up headlights, we trace the evolution of the automobile. Each represents a unique chapter in the story of automotive design, blending ingenuity, functionality, and cultural trends. While modern vehicles may offer unmatched comfort, efficiency, and safety, the loss of these once essential elements reminds us of a time when cars were not just machines, but companions on the road, shaped by human effort, creativity, and nostalgia. For decades, analog gauges formed the visual heartbeat of a car's interior, blending function with artistry. These dials were more than just instruments. They were tactile, expressive, and deeply connected to the car's mechanical soul. The sweep of the speedometer as you pressed the accelerator, the reassuring glow of a fuel gauge, or the oil pressure needle dancing during warm-up all contributed to a driving experience that felt alive and intuitive. Drivers came to understand their cars through these mechanical interfaces, waiting for subtle cues like an engine temperature stabilizing before setting off. However, the digital revolution brought sleek, customizable displays that began replacing analog gauges in the 1980s and 1990s. Modern digital clusters can show everything from GPS maps to fuel efficiency stats, offering unmatched functionality and clarity. Yet to many enthusiasts, digital screens lack the poetic charm of analog gauges, whose every movement told a story about the machine beneath the hood. In the days before modern engine management systems, manual chokes were a driver's best friend. Starting a car on a cold morning required a quick pull of a choke knob to adjust the air-fuel mixture, enabling carbureted engines to fire up. This process demanded a certain finesse. Too much choke could flood the engine, while too little left it stalling. For mechanically inclined drivers, mastering the choke was an essential skill and a badge of pride. However, the advent of automatic chokes and electronic fuel injection systems in the 1980s eliminated the need for this ritual. Cars became smarter, optimizing the air-fuel ratio without driver input. While this advancement greatly simplified starting a car, it also marked the end of a tactile connection to the vehicle's operation that many enthusiasts still miss. Moving to the interior, cigarette lighters and ashtrays once epitomized mid-century car culture. During the 1940s through the 1970s, smoking was so prevalent that these features were practically mandatory. Cars were equipped with built-in ashtrays in the dashboard and even in the rear seats, while cigarette lighters became a common fixture, offering convenience for smokers on the go. These accessories weren't merely functional, they were often stylishly designed to match the car's interior aesthetic. However, societal attitudes toward smoking began shifting in the late 20th century. Growing awareness of health risks led to a decline in smoking, and automakers started phasing out these features in favor of more practical alternatives. By the 1990s, cigarette lighters and ashtrays became optional, and by the early 2000s, they were largely replaced by 12-volt power outlets, symbols of a changing culture that traded cigarettes for smartphones and GPS devices. For a practical yet whimsical innovation, curb feelers hold a special place in automotive history. These thin, flexible metal wires mounted near the wheels served as early parking aids by brushing against curbs to warn drivers when they were getting too close. Especially popular in the 1950s and 1960s, they were indispensable to owners of cars with pristine white wall tires, which could be easily scuffed by careless parking. Curb feelers produced a distinct scraping sound that let drivers know it was time to stop or adjust. However, as parking aids advanced and white wall tires fell out of vogue, curb feelers faded into obsolescence by the late 20th century. Today, they're a charming reminder of a time when protecting a car's appearance required both ingenuity and a little mechanical assistance. Another hallmark of vintage car interiors was the cassette player, a game-changer for in-car entertainment when it emerged in the 1970s. Unlike AM/FM radios, cassette players gave drivers control over their music, allowing them to curate their soundtracks. Road trips became deeply personal as drivers played mixtapes filled with pop hits, love ballads, or favorite tracks for the journey. The clunk of a cassette being inserted, the hiss as it started playing, and even the occasional frustration of untangling tape all added to the experience. But the rise of compact discs, CDs, in the late 1980s marked the beginning of the end for cassettes. CDs offered better sound quality, durability, and ease of use. By the 2000s, digital music players and streaming services had taken over, leaving cassette players to be cherished by nostalgists who remember a time when music was a tangible, curated treasure. On the exterior, the Fender-mounted side mirror was an elegant solution to visibility challenges. Popular from the 1950s to the 1980s, these mirrors were mounted on the car's front fenders rather than the doors. This placement provided a wide field of view and allowed drivers to check their mirrors with a glance through the windshield, making them especially useful in tight urban settings. In Japan, fender mirrors were even mandatory until 1983, becoming an iconic feature of Japanese cars. Their chrome finish and distinctive position added a touch of sophistication to the car's profile. However, as aerodynamic design and safety standards became more important, door-mounted mirrors took over, offering better integration with modern car bodies. Today, fender mirrors are a rare sight, surviving primarily on vintage cars and as cherished relics of a bygone automotive era. Each of these features, curb feelers, cigarette lighters, analog gauges, cassette players, manual chokes, and fender-mounted mirrors, offers a glimpse into the history of automotive innovation. They reflect not only the technological limitations and triumphs of their time, but also the changing values, preferences, and habits of drivers. While most have been replaced by newer technologies, they remain touchstones of nostalgia, symbols of an era when driving was as much about the experience as it was about the destination. Hood ornaments represent another bygone element of automotive artistry. For much of the 20th century, these sculptural emblems, such as Peugeot's Roaring Lion or Rolls-Royce's Spirit of Ecstasy, embodied elegance and craftsmanship, turning cars into moving works of art. Yet as safety regulations tightened and fuel efficiency became a priority, these ornaments became less practical. By the 1960s, many began to disappear, and by the 1990s, they had been largely replaced by flat, embedded badges that were safer and more aerodynamic. While luxury brands like Rolls-Royce continue to feature retractable hood ornaments, the era of grand, prominent sculptures atop car hoods has long passed. Automatic seat belts were one of the more ambitious automotive innovations of the 1980s and early 1990s, aiming to make buckling up effortless. These motorized belts would slide into position along a track when the door was closed or the engine started, securing the driver and passenger with a mechanical hum. While the concept was clever, the execution left much to be desired. The belts were often slow, intrusive, and prone to malfunctions. Drivers frequently found them irritating or unreliable, leading many to disconnect the systems altogether, negating their intended safety benefits. With the advent of airbags and three-point manual seat belts becoming standard in the mid-1990s, automakers abandoned automatic seat belts in favor of simpler and more reliable safety measures. Today, they are a curious relic of an era when engineers strive to automate even the smallest actions. Column shifters, popular from the 1940s through the 1970s, were once a cornerstone of interior design. Positioned on the steering column, these gear selectors freed up space on the floor, making way for spacious bench seats that could accommodate 3 passengers in the front row. Ideal for families and casual cruising, they were practical and simple to use. However, as bucket seats and center consoles gained popularity, the column shifter gave way to floor-mounted shifters, which offered a sportier look and better ergonomics. Today, column shifters survive mainly in trucks and large SUVs, serving as a reminder of a more communal era in automotive interiors. Another stylish yet fleeting feature of the 1970s was the opera window. Positioned in the C-pillar of luxury vehicles, these small decorative windows were less about functionality and more about flair. Seen on cars like the Lincoln Continental and Chrysler Cordoba, opera windows exuded sophistication, often paired with vinyl roofs to enhance the luxurious aesthetic. They were a hallmark of an era when design favored ornate details over utility. However, as automotive styling shifted towards sleeker, more aerodynamic lines in the 1980s, opera windows quickly fell out of fashion. They remain a nostalgic symbol of a time when cars embraced a touch of indulgence and theatricality in their design. Another bold experiment was the push-button transmission, which debuted in the mid-20th century. Chrysler led the charge with this futuristic design, featuring dashboard-mounted buttons to replace traditional gear selectors. Promising simplicity and modernity, push-button transmissions initially gained popularity. However, safety concerns and mechanical complexities caused them to fall out of favor by the 1960s. While some modern cars use push-button gear selectors as a nod to the past, their original heyday remains a fascinating chapter in automotive history. The T-top, or T-bar roof, brought a sense of open-air adventure to the 1970s and 1980s. This design featured 2 removable roof panels that allowed for partial exposure to the elements while retaining the structural integrity of the car. Iconic models like the Chevrolet Corvette and Pontiac Firebird made the T-top a symbol of sporty freedom. Removing the panels became a ritual for sunny drives, yet the design had its flaws. T-tops were prone to leaks, added weight, and had seals that wore out over time. As sunroof designs improved and convertibles regained popularity, T-tops faded into obscurity by the 1990s, leaving enthusiasts with fond memories of their unique charm. A quirky yet practical innovation of the 1970s was the headlight wiper, designed to clear dirt, snow, and grime from headlights for better visibility. These tiny wipers were particularly popular on high-end models from brands like Saab and Mercedes-Benz. While innovative, they were often prone to mechanical issues and added to production costs. By the 1990s, high-pressure headlight washer systems rendered wipers obsolete, though they remain a distinctive feature of vintage luxury vehicles. Hidden fuel filler caps added an element of surprise and aesthetic cohesion to mid-century cars. Often concealed behind taillights, license plates, or other exterior panels, they maintained the sleek lines of the car's design. While visually appealing, these hidden caps were often inconvenient to access and posed safety risks during rear-end collisions. By the late 1960s, more accessible and standardized designs became the norm. Swivel seats, introduced in the late 1950s, were another inventive yet short-lived feature. Designed to pivot outward, these seats made entering and exiting the car easier, especially for passengers in restrictive clothing or with limited mobility. Unfortunately, their complexity and concerns about their safety during collisions led to their demise by the 1960s. Though rare, swivel seats remain a testament to the creativity of mid-century car designers. Finally, car phones stand as a marker of early mobile technology. First introduced in the 1940s and gaining widespread popularity in the 1980s, car phones were a status symbol for business professionals and tech enthusiasts alike. Integrated directly into vehicles, they offered the novelty of communication on the go. However, as portable cell phones became more affordable and practical in the 1990s, car phones quickly became obsolete. Today, modern vehicles offer Bluetooth connectivity and smartphone integration, making car phones a charming relic of a time when staying connected meant installing a telephone in your car. From automatic seat belts to car phones, each of these features captures the innovative spirit of their time. They remind us of an era when cars were more than just machines. They were reflections of personality, creativity, and bold experimentation. Though many of these features have faded into history, they continue to hold a special place in the hearts of enthusiasts, representing a time when every detail of a car told a story. If you enjoy celebrating these nostalgic gems and exploring the rich history of automotive design, don't forget to subscribe to Retro Rides Garage. Join us as we take a deep dive into the quirks, innovations, and iconic moments that shaped the cars we love. See you on the road.